Hi, and welcome to another episode of Community Storytelling. Having so much fun listening to everybody's story, because everyone has one, right? I'm Lissa Kreisler, and thanks for being with us today. And I have Michael Lovaglia. Did I say that right? You say it better. Right. You can probably say it better.
Lovaglia, you got to get the hand in there.
So you can tell he's Italian. And not only are you Italian, you love tomatoes.
Yes, indeed.
What could be better? You know, I have my grandson is 2.5 years old, and the very first food he fell in love with, believe it or not, tomatoes. Loves to eat tomatoes.
Yeah.
And it's your whole family, it's your whole life.
Yeah, it is indeed.
So let's go back to the 1800s.
Do we have to?
Yes, we have to, because that's where it all begins, right?
Yeah. So my family came here from, my grandpa's side came from a small village called Tricatico, which is sort of in the southern region of Italy, the instep of the boot, and my grandma's family came from Sicily. And so they came here in the 1800s and settled in Willow Glen, which was then Goose Town.
Are you serious?
Predominantly Italian immigrant neighborhood, yeah.
Goose Town.
And they lived in a little shack with dirt floors, no indoor plumbing, and they used to make tomato sauce in their backyard. And we've continued that tradition on until recently.
So how big was their backyard?
Oh, they had chickens and a pig and a garden, so they had a pretty big backyard.
So how many tomatoes are we talking?
We do what they call lugs, which is a small box of tomatoes, like a cannery box, and we do, I don't know, 20 or 30 lugs a year, so it's a lot of tomatoes.
So is the family still in Willow Glen?
We are still in Willow Glen up until about 3 months ago when my grandma, who's in the film, just recently passed.
Oh,
so
I'm
now
so
we're not in Willow Glen
sorry.
anymore, but we have been for all these years.
Oh, my goodness. What was Grandma's name?
Angie Lovaglia.
And how long did she live?
95.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
I'm telling you.
And olive oil.
Oh my goodness. Well, and how wonderful for you that you who gets to have a grandmother who's in her 90s?
It was amazing.
And so you love tomatoes.
Yes.
And you still can, though, someplace else? Or?
Well, we stopped in the interim, but we're moving the production up to my sister's place in Nevada. So we'll be moving it up there.
Do you sell these commercially?
No, we don't. We just have done it for the family for all these years.
And
a lot of people have asked, but no,
so you eat a lot of tomato sauce?
We eat a lot of tomato sauce.
What do you make, lasagna? And
yeah, we make a virgin sauce, so it's just a little bit of salt, and you'll see in the film how it's actually made. But then once you get it home in the mason jar, then you add whatever seasonings and meat or whatever you want to it to make it your own.
So of course you had to make a movie about this.
Of course I did. Yeah. The funny thing is I made this movie in 2005 and I sat on the footage all this time and finally said, get your butt in gear and do something with this.
And I hope you're dedicating it to Grandma.
Well, it was shot before she passed. I dedicated it to my Aunt Rose, who's also one of the stars of the films.
Wonderful.
She died, and then so I dedicated it to her. Yeah.
So it's a 17-minute documentary.
16 and a half, yeah.
And where do you show this?
So it premiered at the Italian Family Festa in San Jose, which is every year in August.
Yes, which they moved to History San Jose.
Which they moved to History Park,
which is wonderful.
It's an amazing location. And so from there, I got a lot of exposure, and so it's going to be it's at the preliminary judging at the Rome, Italy Film Festival, Cinema LA, Best Shorts Film Festival. It's airing on KCAT TV, local channel KCAT TV as well, since February, I believe. And so we're getting a lot of traction there. Yeah.
What do you do for a living?
I'm in real estate. Yeah.
Is everybody in real estate these days?
Well, it's a hot market, the hottest market in the country.
And do you give everybody who buys a house, you give them a can of tomatoes?
Well, if
or a jar of tomatoes?
When I start making it, that's a good idea.
That's great. I love it. And they have to watch the documentary.
They have to watch the documentary.
So what is it called?
It's called Pomodoro.
Where did that name come from?
Well, that's Italian for tomato.
Well, I sort of knew that.
Yeah.
Sort of knew that.
So I thought it was a short, sweet, literally, title for the film.
I think that's just great.
Yeah.
So you will always love tomatoes. You grow tomatoes wherever you will be.
I always said if I was stranded on a desert island, I would have to have tomatoes for sure.
Did you ever think of moving to Italy?
I have thought of moving to Italy. Yeah, just haven't.
Because I think they would appreciate you.
Well,
not that we don't, but you know,
it's
Italy,
a good idea.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
And you love pizza, I take it.
I love pizza. I love anything Italian food.
So
who doesn't?
What doesn't a tomato go with?
Not much. You can even make a cake out of tomatoes, actually.
Well, that may be going too far. Although my grandson would love that.
It tastes like a carrot cake. It's good.
You are delightful. So tell me, Pomodoro, can we Google this?
Yeah, you can go to, it's on IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database, but I
Yeah.
also have a Facebook page for it. If you go to Facebook and do Pomodoro short film, it'll come up, and there's a lot of information you can find out about the film and where it's going next.
You make me smile. That's
you
just
make me
great.
smile.
Michael Lovaglia,
Very good.
Pomodoro.
Yes.
And community storytelling. Who's got a story? Are you going to be next? Go to KCAT.org and either nominate yourself or nominate a good friend or a relative, anybody. We love having you here at KCAT TV 15.
Hi, my name is Michael Lovaglia, and my Aunt Rosie recently passed, and I wanted to honor her memory by telling you the story of our family's rich history and tradition of canning our own tomato sauce in the backyard of my aunt in San Jose, California. It was important to me to show the dynamic of my family coming together once a year, and I think it really speaks to the Italian-American experience in the Bay Area and probably across the country. So let me take you back to 2005, where this little vignette begins. This all came about. Why do you guys do tomatoes every year?
Why do we do them? Because we love them.
Yeah, but why don't you just buy sauce in the store?
Because it's not the same.
What's so special about this sauce?
Well, it's thicker and just sweeter, and we get the best tomatoes. Just altogether better, that's all.
Yeah. How long has family been doing it?
As long as I've been in the family, and I've been, how many years? 60, well, let's see, we were married 62.
Well, what year did you get married?
1940. 1942.
And Grandpa built the machine, right?
At the cannery, helped him, get the parts or whatever.
He built it all by himself.
No, I don't know if he did or not by himself. But anyway, it's a good machine. We don't have to grind it by hand anymore.
How did that work? How did it work before?
Well, I wasn't in the family when they used to grind it by hand,
Oh, you weren't.
but they did. And that was probably a long process.
Where does this all take place?
At Teresa's house, sister-in-law Teresa, up the street, 1375 Whitehurst Court.
So what's your job in the whole thing? What do you do?
I pour the sauce into the jars.
That's what you do?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their own job, huh?
Yeah. Specialization,
Yeah. You come from a long line of people who work in the cannery, is that right?
Yes. I've worked at, the first time I worked in the cannery, I was 11 years old. And at that time, when you were 11, you looked older. And our boss, the superintendent, he knew that we weren't 12, but anyway, we got him. He gave us a job and we worked. And then I worked every year since I retired in 1983. And then when I was 13, I got a job at the Baron and Gray. And I worked there about 38 years before they closed up the plant. Well, from Baron and Gray, then Dole Pineapple bought it. Then they closed in 1968. 8, I think, yeah. So then I went to work for Glorietta's for a couple of years, and they closed up. And then I went to Contadina, and I worked there 10 years until they sold out. So now there's no more cannery. So I've worked all those years in the cannery since I was a little girl. And I enjoyed every bit of it.
This happens the same time every year, the same weekends, or?
In September and October. When they were working in the cannery, we always did them in October because the cannery season would be over and everybody be home to help.
And who does all this? Who's all involved in this whole process?
My son, my daughter-in-law, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law. Today we'll have my grandson with us too. And my niece and all her kids come and help.
Tonight, what will you do?
Tonight we will cut the tomatoes.
By hand with...
First, they'll be in a tub with water, wash them. One of the children help put it into the sacks, and they have to be in the sacks overnight to get the drain of water out. And then we get about 6 sacks every year, and then leave them overnight, and then the next morning my daughter-in-law and my sister-in-law put them in the pots and cook them. I get there usually around 6 o'clock, and they're already started to cook. And about 7:30, I think, they have to put them through the grinder. They put them through the grinder, and then they put them back into the pots. We wash the pots and put the good sauce back into the pots and cook them again. And then about 9 o'clock in the morning, we start to can them.
And how does that work?
My daughter-in-law and my other sister-in-law get the bottles ready, and they bring them over to me, and I fill them up. And my brother-in-law Pat or my son Frank will carry them over to the table, and Rosie will clean them and put the lids on them and seals them. And then she puts them into these cannery boxes. And we usually do 20 lugs at a time.
What is a lug?
It's small, much smaller than a box.
And then later, Janie comes after they cool a little bit, and we separate them for everybody. Maybe 3 dozens for this one, maybe 2 dozens for this one, or 10, and then we separate them. Then they come and pick up the tomato when it's cool. They have to cool down because when they're still hot, those rings get loose again, so we don't want to touch them until, And then we get ready for the next batch to wash the jars. Well, we wash the jars about a week before, get everything ready before we start, we do the canning.
And then from there, everybody in the family, do they do their own way of making sauce, or do you think everybody makes the sauce the same way?
Everybody has a little different way of doing it, I think. But it's mostly
Based on whose original sauce?
my grandmother, my mother, my mother-in-law.
So it's between your mother-in-law and your mother's way of making sauce. You make your
That's
sauce
the way I
between the
make
two
my
of them.
sauce.
And I can't taste any difference between your sauce and my sauce as far as flavor goes.
How do you do your sauce if you don't?
I buy it at away in cans, and then I cook it with
No, but he wants to know what you put in it.
No, he buys his own sauce.
I buy the sauce and the puree.
I mean,
No, the meatballs. Well, you know, the same old way you guys do it.
It's the same as everybody else
Meatballs,
does it.
pig's feet, you know, pork, spare ribs. Sometimes I throw in there.
spare ribs are good.
Yeah, whatever way you guys cook them, I cook mine the same way. You think I'm gonna go through all this crap here doing
What
this?
more can you want?
I do that for all my food.
It's probably more expensive than buying it, but it's still the best.
So basically the sauce is virgin sauce. There's nothing added except what, salt?
Just a little salt, that's all.
The one thing with this sauce is you don't have to cook it as long as you have to cook your commercial sauces.
Oh yeah?
With all the acid, most of the acid all cooked out of this in the second process, so it's sweet. Where the store-bought, like, sauce, you have that real acid taste, so you have to cook the sauce twice as long to get rid of that.
Tradition. You gotta go by tradition. And so, Aunt Rosie has taken up the tradition and continued it for all these years until either we run out of people or we run out of tomatoes. Either one.
There was a news article about the family a few years back. How did the newspaper hear about it?
My daughter-in-law had a friend or something that was in the newspaper business, and we have a picture of that.
And they just came and interviewed you?
Uh-huh.
They talked to you?
Yes, it was very nice. We had a nice picture in the paper, and everybody called us and asked us about our tomatoes. The whole thing.
And there were some recipes in the newspaper too, right? Why hasn't the family decided to maybe sell this sauce?
Sell it?
Yeah.
Too much work. Too much work to do that.
Has anybody asked about that? Buying it? Where can we get the sauce? No one's ever asked that? Like somebody that's not in the family?
Oh yeah, but there has been people that said, why don't you do something with it, but we wouldn't do anything.
So this tomato canning over the years is sort of the glue that maybe holds your family together, you think?
Well, it's that too, and it's the way we were raised. The way we were raised, that my mother taught us respect.
Your upbringing, you attribute that to your mother and father?
My mother, that's the way they were. They're very hospitable. People come over, she made them feel at home. And her neighbors, a lot of them, they would come in the afternoon to visit my mom. They didn't even want to go home because their husbands weren't like my dad. The poor wives, they couldn't buy what they wanted. They couldn't do what they wanted. They used to hand over their check. They used to come and tell my mother. They used to cry on my mother's shoulder. My mother used to advise them, you know. It wasn't that way at our house. No matter who came over, the table was always set. Always food on the table. And a lot of times, my brother's friends that I went to school with, their mothers were working, they locked the doors, and the kids couldn't get in the house to get nothing to eat. So what did we do? My brother would bring them over to my mother's house, and my mother would give them sausage and put food on the table. And you know, those kids never forgot about that. There was always plenty to eat. They used to give food to the hobos. In those days were hobos, you know, tramp, we call them tramp. They didn't come for money. They wanted food.
So this is based on a Sicilian recipe and
Tricanese. For the sauce, you fry the garlic and the onion and the meat.
and what kind of meat do you use?
You can use pork and beef. Pork makes it smell sweet, good.
Pig's
Or you-
feet you use,
You
right?
can use pig's feet, you can use sausage, anything pork, because that makes it, and you can even make chicken in the gravy, makes it sweet. Now that's red pepper, cayenne, There is salt in the sauce already, but I'll put another. And I salted all the meat, so that's got all the salt in too. I also put a couple of these red peppers. We like our sauce hot. Frozen parsley that I grew in my yard. Already chopped and everything, so I'll just put some of that in there. A lot of people use rosemary and a lot of other stuff, but I don't. I don't like rosemary. Leave it cook slow. Okay. Now I'll clean a mess.
So do you think you'll continue doing this for much longer, or what do you think? It seems like it's a long process.
As long as we can, we will. But when we can't anymore, we just won't.
Is it just the tradition that you like, or is it because you like the sauce, or both that you keep doing it? I mean, at some point, I think you'll be too tired to do something like this. Do you think it will continue after you're done, or?
Well, we're all getting older, so the young ones will have to take over.
Is their breakfast?
Oh, you know what? I haven't been recording the dialogue on all this.
What?
The dialogue hasn't been working.
Oh, Michael!
Shoot.
I have to start all over again.